Hi everyone, I'm going to talk you through a tutorial so that you can make your own Cubist inspired portraits. So the other day I read to you from one of my favourite books, Picasso's Trousers, and we saw that Picasso went through many different styles of making paintings and drawings. He was very skilled in a traditional sense at applying colour and tone, and the image you can see on the screen now is actually a portrait he made of his mother when he was still a very young man. I think he was only about 15 or 16 when he painted it. And it really is testament to what could be considered traditional values in painting. But that wasn't enough for Picasso, as we heard. He had so many different ways in which to explore form. He wanted to show that form was multifaceted, meaning it had many faces. And that very nature is the thing that drove his movement into Cubism. We can see here the portrait he painted of Dora Maar, who was his muse and mistress. He painted her from many different angles. And again, from the book, you'll remember that he is highly skilled at painting faces, and he wanted to paint them from the front and from the side. And actually, he also wanted to paint them from above and below, and not just from one side, from both sides, as forms of symmetry, of balance. He wanted to paint them as fragments and fractures. He wanted to paint them as slivers. And he wanted to do all of that in a way that still expressed something of the individual he hoped he was conveying. So, when we think about painting or drawing or collaging or even photographing from the front and the side all at the same time, what we obviously have to start with is an appreciation of the face or the object from all around it. So if I was to look at any object I could pick up in my home, let's say even just a mug or a bowl, I would be very interested as Picasso in what that bowl or mug looked like from the side, from its base, from above, and from the other side and all around, as many different angles as I could manage in one scene. So what I'm going to start with today are 4 photographs of a female's head. It's photographed from 4 different angles, very simply. It's got a face-forward portrait, we've got a side view portrait, and then we've got 3/4 views. What I'd like you to think about is, if you have a printer at home, you could maybe stop at the previous slide and you could print just that slide out and use it as a physical collage to do the thing I'm going to do using only PowerPoint in a minute. The whole point of this is to isolate each head at a time and then take sections or segments of it and overlap it or overlay it in some way. So I appreciate that at home many of you won't have access to things like Photoshop or other software that would enable easy image manipulation, but you actually don't need that. So everything you're going to see I've done using only PowerPoint. And actually I suspect that for a lot of you, you'll be able to do it using Word as well. So what I've done first of all is I've separated out each of the images. So that was what I had to begin with. I had the 4 pictures and I've separated them out. And then after that, what I can do is I can go through each image individually and separately. And what you'll see on the screen there are some screen grabs I did earlier. In your toolbar in PowerPoint, you're able to remove the background, and that's in picture format. And what I did was I made a selection from each of the individual portrait shots, where I removed the background so much that I ended up actually with only small segments of the woman's face. Now, that's going to take you some time. You go through each of the images individually. Not only that, but in addition to removing the background and selecting these odd eyes or strange jaw lines or whatever, you can also, of course, then arrange them. You can flip them horizontally, you can flip them vertically, you can obviously also tilt them and change them as you go through. And so if you see what I selected from the photographs in their original form, I've selected these very odd looking isolated masks from her face, from the model's face. And then what I've done is I've simply assembled them. So this is all again on PowerPoint, this is nothing fancy. Something really useful to do is, once you've assembled what you're happy with, is to select the whole of that image and save it as a JPEG photograph. So every image is then compressed into one. And what that then means is that you have it to do what you want with it. And because Picasso also obviously loved colour, if you're doing this digitally, you could of course also change the colour, change the saturation of each individual segment to make something that ultimately is quite Picasso-like. So that's a very quick run through of how to digitally collage a portrait in the style of Picasso. But like I said, if you're someone who has a printer at home and you have permission to use it, then maybe you might like to print out the original 4 photographs that I've given to you, and you could actually physically or manually assemble them by printing out, cutting them up and sticking them together. The other thing, to take it a step further again, is that don't rely on my images, the photographs I've given you. You could actually take your own photographs. You could borrow a brother, a sister, a guardian, a carer, a mum, a dad, an auntie, an uncle, whoever is at home in your lockdown world, and you could ask them to pose for you, from the front, from the side, and from 3/4 views, with their heads tilted at all different directions. And then you could print them out, chop them up, reassemble them, and create your Picasso Cubist masterpiece. Thanks for listening.